This boy killed his entire family on Halloween. This case is insane. You won't want to miss it. Hi, I'm Meg. I talk about your crime. Let's get into this case.
A triple homicide in Ottawa County this Halloween. Deputies won't say how the mother, father, and son died, but their suspects already behind bars.
The Liskey family lived in a northern suburb of Toledo, Ohio. They had quite a lot of land near Lake Erie. The name of the lake certainly matches this case. They were a blended household which consisted of William Billy Lisk and his wife Susan and their 3 sons. William Jr., who I'm just going to refer to the son as William, because they have the same name, and the dad is Billy, okay? Just to avoid any sort of confusion. So, the dad, Billy, son, William. William was his son from a previous marriage, and the 2 other boys, Derek and Darren, were Susan's from her previous marriage. This story focuses on Billy's son, William. Now, he was what you'd consider a problem child. William was a really angry kid. He bullied kids in school. He would act up where he could. That noise. This was something that Susan and Billy thought would just go away with age, but it didn't. His behavior not only remained, but it got significantly worse with age. Now, William was only 15 when Susan and Billy got together. Susan and Billy were so in love, and they ended up getting married and decided to move in together with all of the boys. William hated this. He hated Susan. He hated how she came in and changed everything, and he wanted his old life back. And I think this is a pretty normal feeling. Any normal kid might feel like that, but William was not a normal kid. As the tension grew between William and Susan, so did his disobedience. It all went downhill very fast. There was an altercation in 2002 which led William to be charged in juvenile court. They probably hoped that this charge was enough to kind of scare him and to stop misbehaving. But instead, he got angrier and he got more reckless, and the arguments with Susan became explosive. And in 2004, when William was 18, he would get charged yet again, this time with assault for hitting Susan. And only a month later, he bashed her over the head with a mug and stole her car. Susan wanted to press charges again for that incident, but he had to undergo psychological assessment after that, where he was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, therefore making him unfit for trial. William was placed in a group home by his father, which was designed for mental health patients. But despite being in that home, it didn't stop William from getting into trouble still with the police. He then returned home, and not long after, he attempted to attack Susan while she was in the shower. Luckily, she was able to get away. This made Billy so angry that he ended up kicking him out. Mind you, he was 18, so he had to fend for himself. He would still take some medication, but he wasn't consistent with it, which is very damaging, because the moment he thought he was getting better, he would just go off of it, because he'd be like, oh, well, I'm fine now. And then he would do drugs and drink, etc. In 2007, a therapist deemed William a danger to himself and others. He was then hospitalized, and his father, Billy, didn't want to give up on him. He didn't want to see his son live in a hospital forever, and so he applied for guardianship. William was then taken out of the hospital and placed in a halfway home, but he would also occasionally go and visit the family Liskey home. Some believed he was getting better at this point, but in fact, he was getting progressively worse. Susan and her 2 boys were obviously uncomfortable with William ever being in the house, but they put up with it in support of Billy. Now, around the Liskey house, pets started going missing in the neighborhood, and a dog was even found shot, and I think that everyone kind of knew who did it. Billy started taking William away to the family cabin, which was only a few hours away from the house. It was his way of keeping William away from Susan and the boys, giving them a bit of a break, and also keeping him away from the neighborhood pets. He was trying to be a good dad. He was trying to help his son the best he could, and he would go hunting with him and try to get him to talk about how he was feeling. But Billy had no idea what his son was actually capable of until it was too late. Jump to the 31st of October, 2010. Halloween. One of Susan's sons, Devin, who was 16 at the time, had spent the night before at his biological father's house. It was a Sunday, so he needed to go back to the Liskey residence to get his things to get ready for church that day. And so he did exactly that. He returned home at around 9:30 a.m. and went straight upstairs to his room to start getting ready. On his way back downstairs, he ran into William, who was never usually in the house on his own. I don't think he was allowed. William actually made conversation with Devin, which was abnormal. Devin realized that the couch had been made into a bed, so he assumed that William had just stayed the night. But he knew that his parents weren't home, but he didn't think anything of it. He just thought they were getting on with their day. William's demeanor was also very just off-putting based on how he usually was. Usually he was very moody and dismissive, but today he seemed happy almost. He was very upbeat, and he started asking Devin some questions. Where are you going? How are you getting there? When will you be back? Etc. Like I said, Devin did find this a bit weird, but he didn't think into it that much. Finished the conversation and he went off to church. He got home later in the afternoon and still no one was home, but once again, they were probably just out. That's what he thought to himself. And he went up to his room and just played video games for a while. Later in the evening, it was dark at this point, mind you. He goes downstairs and the lights are off. And at this point, he's a bit where is everyone? Where's my brother? Where are my parents? He decided to check Susan and Billy's room to see if maybe they were in there. And when he opened the door, he realized they were, but they were still in bed. But eerily, their heads were under the duvet. He called out their names a few times and received no response, which is when he decided to pull the covers back. He was met with a truly horrific scene. One so bad that he thought, this must be a prank just for that split second. But it wasn't. There was just red everywhere. At that point, he ran straight out of the house and rang his aunt, who would then ring the police. The police were then also met with the same horrific scene. Susan, who was only 48, and Billy, who was 53, were shot multiple times in the head. And unfortunately, Susan was also assaulted after. And then they headed into Derek's room, where they found him as well, in the fetal position under his blankets. His cause of death was blunt force trauma, which was discovered to be with a hammer. One of the worst discoveries made in this whole case was that the police put together that when Devin had originally come home at 9:30 in the morning, his family were already dead. When he had that conversation with William had already committed the crime. And he could have been next. And why didn't William do it? It's all these questions, and it's the thought that he sat there playing video games, not knowing that on the other side of his wall were his parents. I can't imagine the effect that had on Devin. I mean, he lost everyone. There was no question on who committed this crime. The police also realized Billy's car was stolen. They found Billy at the family cottage and arrested him. Originally wanted to plead not guilty, but ended up pleading guilty to avoid the death penalty. He was 25 when he killed his entire family. I say entire, I know that Devin still survived, but Devin lost his entire family. He was given 3 life sentences with no possibility of parole, but he ended up unaliving himself in his own prison cell at the age of 29. That's all for this case. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments. Wherever he is in the world, I hope that Devin is doing okay despite everything. And let me know what case you guys want to see next. Thank you all for your love and support, and I'll see you in the next video. If you want more videos like this, check out the playlist down below. Bye!